More than 1,000 Colombians have been extradited during the current government. Spain, France, Italy, and mainly the United States are the countries that request the extradition process. There are still more than 300 people in Colombian prisons waiting for the approval of their extradition process, and possibly hundreds that haven't been captured yet. Has the extradition of 1,300 people related to drug traffic been effective to end the drugs business, especially in the American society? Don't you think it's about time to apply new strategies? Different to extradition, different to the war, to end this scourge.
It's totally clear that Colombia is still one of the biggest producers of drugs in the world, which means extradition is not an effective policy. It's just the way extradition has been presented as a solution, and the great amount of extradited people has been shown as a great triumph of the Plan Colombia. And there is no such thing. The proof is that the big mafias and the great drug lords are still intact.
The ambassador who urged extradition in Colombia in 1994, Miles Frechette, stands that simple cases can be well processed in Colombia and avoid the expense of hundreds of thousands of dollars to the government. There are serious flaws in the extradition policies of the US after having spent millions of dollars in a judicial system reform in Colombia to avoid sending that kind of cases to the American justice. Intel and cooperation activities can easily be performed in Colombia. We said we could reach and capture the master drug lords and that we could end the whole organization, and that never happened. The cost of prosecuting all Colombian citizens in extradition is exorbitant for the taxpayers of the United States and other extradition-requesting countries, and that frequently implies expensive capture operations, intel, transportation on airplanes designed for 160 passengers, only to carry 5 or 6 prisoners, hiring of bilingual attorneys for months, translation of documents, transportation and housing for witnesses, which adds to the current prison crisis that the United States faces due to the high costs of services and maintenance of prisons. Hundreds of thousands of dollars are spent every year on the prosecution process of every supposed foreign criminal. All this without the possibility of being sued by the unfairly convicted Colombians. There are countless sue processes on course. For every Pablo Escobar, there are dozens of Colombian citizens that rarely deserve extradition. There is no system that can filter what's important and what isn't, and a great part of the taxes that American citizens pay is destined to support these processes, as affirmed by many American attorneys specialized on extradition cases. I'm not justifying felony. I think extradition is important. I think extradition, well-focused and with serious treaties that allow to take the real felon to purge his crimes in an international prison would be adequate. But unfortunately, that's not how it's being done. I feel sorry for saying this, but I think we're down on our knees. Colombia is a country of laws, and Colombia is a free country, and it is an independent country, and that's what the political constitution says. But despite that, there's a lot of people that are being extradited just because. And the most incredible thing is that the country that is proud for being leader in human rights, in defense for the human rights, and that always criticizes our country because we don't defend the human rights, is precisely the one that, regarding extradition, is the main violator of human rights. Us Colombians are strangers in our own territory. The pressure that the police and the army receive in order to achieve results is well recognized, even if they have to convict innocent civilians. If you find out that a person has no money in Colombia, no real estate, no vehicles, maybe just an old car, no bank accounts, you research and find out that his family is completely normal, in a middle-class neighborhood for 6, 7 or 8 months. Just tell me why they say they are collaborators of Hezbollah or Al-Qaeda or members of the Envigado's office. Those are precisely the false positives in extradition. The International Foundation Ideas for Peace, directed to the countries that request Colombian citizens in extradition, recommends to find a coherent strategy to fight against drug traffic, and thus they can apply within their policies of extradition the same rights and criteria used in prisoners in custody of the United States and other countries to those required in extradition. Finally, those accused will not be judged under a previously established treaty, because it just doesn't exist. But they will be judged on what the American law determines, and the convicted, the justice, the attorneys have a total lack of knowledge of actual law. For this reason, it is important for the Constitutional Court to analyze the verdict of the great number of petitions submitted by the prisoners and their attorneys, seeking protection of their constitutional and natural rights as Colombians.
Human dignity is worthless here. It can happen to anyone.
Martha's brother was sentenced to spend 2 years and a half in prison in New York.
People with false positive problems, people whose processes have been violated, must denounce. Because there is an increment of people that will be damaged by the process, by the system. It will be worse.
Juan and Maria's son still has to spend 13 years in prison in the United States. His parents and his little daughter are still waiting for the chance to visit him.
I went to the consulate. I sent a letter where I explained everything. I asked them for any kind of collaboration, hoping we could go and visit him.
Nora is still gathering the money for the next surgery of his son. Her husband was extradited to Florida. They couldn't get in charge of his case, so he was translated to Oklahoma, where they couldn't make responsible for him, so he was translated to North Carolina. He's been at the United States for 10 months. He hasn't been in a formal trial yet, and he still doesn't know his charges. And because of this, obviously he hasn't been able to present a defense.
I think after someone has been extradited and separated from his family for such a long time with no fair reason, there is a terrible aftermath.
After 9 months, Adriana's husband is still waiting for a reply of the government in regard to the proof against him or the approval of his extradition to finally end the uncertainty of knowing when this nightmare will end.
As far as I know, the one thing left is President Uribe's signature, and within the next month or the next week, they will take him. I think, as many others do, that they are kidnapped because all their rights have been violated.
Selene's husband has been at Combita for 10 months. Every day, he and his family keep the unbreakable faith that still remains in them. And they hope that soon it will be discovered that it was all a big mistake, and the US will desist of the extradition process and the collateral process of destroying their lives.